Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 3 of office hours, also known as Food Nerd Talks, here at Cooperative Extension. So, that we always start off with first a weird fruit or vegetable that you may or may have not had. And then we open it up for questions about this weird fruit or vegetable or any other gardening or food questions you may have. Normally, as for those of you who have been here before, I usually teach cooking classes, but since we're not able to do that, this is a fun little way for us to, for me to inform you of something new and fun, and then let you know that, I'm always available for your questions, even if we're not on these talks. You can get a hold of me, and I can still answer your food questions. So, all right, so without further ado, I'm gonna show you what we're doing this week. The golden kiwi. So here's a regular kiwi, and you can see it's got hair on it. It's a fuzzy kiwi. And then this is the golden kiwi. It's bald. So I'm going to go ahead. Some people actually bite right into these and eat them skin and all, even the hairy ones. I don't really prefer to eat them that way. So I'm going to show you how I cut these so that you can eat them and enjoy them. But you can eat the peel. It won't hurt you. It's a whole lot of fiber. But I tend to enjoy just the flesh on the inside. So let me go ahead and cut this. I like to quarter it. Some people will cut it in half like this and eat it with a spoon, like my colleague Krista Gibson that's handling the Zoom tech. She'll just eat it with a spoon like this in the morning. But I like to cut mine, and this is a fun way to serve it to kids because you can bite it like an orange. I want to show you the difference between the golden kiwi and the regular one. So this is a golden kiwi, the bald one, and this one is the regular kiwi, the green one. There's actually many different species of kiwi, but these are the two that are primarily available in the United States. So this one, you'll see the regular kiwi. You'll see this a lot of times on fancy like fruit plates and things like that. And the way that you would do it for a fruit plate is you actually you cut the top and bottom off and run a spoon around the inside, and you can take the pulp out and slice it or carve it or whatever you want to do. So all kiwis are native to Southeast China in the Yangtze Valley. The Yangtze River is a very long river there that sort of splits through the southeast quadrant of China. And along that valley is where these are native. But it's funny because they're called kiwi, and kiwi is, or kiwi fruit, and people think of this as a New Zealand treat because kiwi the people are New Zealanders. They're named that for their flightless bird called the kiwi, and around it varies depending on what you read, but between 1904 and 1907, somewhere in there, a principal of an all-girls school visited China and brought back some of the seeds from a kiwi and handed it to an agriculturalist, and they started growing it. It didn't fruit for I think 5 or 6 years when the first fruit were available off of it, and it was cultivated all over the place there because of the beautiful environment, and so it was perfect to grow them, and so they became a serious contender in the kiwi fruit market. They originally called these Chinese gooseberries, and even though they're about the size of an egg, they called them Chinese gooseberries. And around World War II, when they started exporting the fruit, in order to export it to the American market, they renamed it kiwi fruit because at that time we were in a Cold War with China. So it probably wouldn't have been as popular called a Chinese gooseberry, but it's also not a gooseberry. That's a completely different fruit as well. But yeah, that's the golden kiwi. They're very rich in fiber and vitamin C. Anything that's sour pretty much is going to be rich in vitamin C. And they're very good for you. They're very rich in fiber. And for my seeds kids that are joining us today, eating fiber frequently keeps you regular, and being regular means that you go number 2 every day. So this is very important to everyone on earth, but especially as you get older, you want to make sure to eat enough fiber. Now, any of the kiwis that you can find, they actually, if you have an allergy to mangoes, papayas, bananas, avocados, but especially the first 3, pineapples, these may actually cause your mouth to react as well. And that's because of the word of the day, proteases. So a protease is a molecule, an enzyme that actually breaks down proteins. And that's, if you ever see ACE, whenever you're looking at something in biology, ACE is always an enzyme. It's a mechanical protein that does a job. So lactase breaks down lactose in your body. There's all these different ACEs, all these different enzymes in the world. But if you look at the front, ACE is the end, and so it's obviously an enzyme, but when you look at the front, it tells you what it operates on, and it's proteins. So an enzyme that operates on proteins, okay? So, and the one in particular to kiwis is called actinidase. You don't need to remember any of that, but basically what it does is it breaks down proteins. So this can be irritating to some people if they eat them, but it also, to a lot of people, it doesn't bother me, but it does bother some people. Their mouth or their lips will get a little bit itchy. But you can usually easily overcome it by drinking a little bit of water. Proteases are important because they break down proteins, and this is what is the active ingredient in meat tenderizer. So a lot of times people will take kind of a cheaper cut of meat and they'll shake a little bit of meat tenderizer on it, and then you leave it there for a couple of hours and it starts to break down the tougher proteins so the meat is more tender. And the primary protease that they use for that comes from papayas, and it's called papain. So papain, actane, there's some in figs in it, they call it phycin. Some comes out of pineapples, and it's called bromelain because pineapples are in the bromeliad family of plants. So you could either buy meat tenderizer, or you can make a marinade out of any of those fruits that we talked about before. And if you make a marinade, not only does it add delicious flavor to the meat, but it also makes the meat more tender. So just know that if you were going to make a marinade with like papaya and pineapple especially, they have very powerful proteases in them, and you only want to marinate the meat for like a couple of hours. You wouldn't want to leave like a pork chop in a protease marinade for like 3 or 4 days, because it'll just get real disintegrating and kind of gross. I didn't know that as a young cook in my early 20s, and I accidentally did that, and it was a big old mess. So take it from me, just a couple of hours on some of these. In order to deactivate any enzyme, in order to deactivate it, all you have to do is cook it or heat it. So this is sort of like if any of you out there have made Jell-O, and it says, you know, if you read on the back of the package to make the Jell-O, that you shouldn't put raw pineapple in Jell-O. You have to cook the pineapple first or use canned pineapple. That's because of that protease in there. Gelatin is all protein. It's all like refined animal protein. And if you throw an enzyme in there that breaks down proteins, you'll follow all the directions to make the Jell-O or your gelatin dessert, and then you'll take it out of the fridge a few hours later and it's just liquid, because the gelatin structure was never actually able to form because of the enzyme that broke it down. So so yeah, that's pretty much it for what I wanted to say about these guys. Does anybody have any questions about kiwis or anything else?
We do. We have, so is an itch of the mouth a reaction that shows an allergic reaction?
Well, it's an irritation. Technically, it could be an allergy. When people have allergies, it's a reaction to proteins. Okay, so if someone says, I'm allergic to, you know, sugar, no, because sugar is all starch. So you may have like, sort of like if someone says, I'm lactose intolerant, you can have an intolerance to sugars. But if you're allergic to milk, you're actually allergic to the casein or the whey protein that's in it. So technically it could be an allergy. I've never heard of anybody having like an asphyxiation reaction to it, where you break out in hives and your throat closes up. I've never heard of that, but it could be possible. I've just never heard of it with like kiwis and things. So it is like kind of like a mild allergy, like an irritation. You're having a reaction in your mouth, like a little bit of an immune response to consuming the protease. Yes, but it's very rare. So.
And I have a live question from Jack Curtin. So I'm going to allow Jack Curtin to talk.
Jack Curtin, I was going to talk about you. Okay, Jack Curtin, what's your question?
Kind of takes a minute sometimes for folks to get in. Can you hear us, Jack? Maybe we'll come back to him. Jack, you just speak up when you're able to.
Hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you.
Getting used to Zoom. Yeah, the question was, is there any characteristic of the golden kiwi that would justify its price over the regular kiwi?
Okay, so, all right, that's a great question. The reason is that less of these were produced. For a long time, you could always find these. You could always find the regular kiwis. And then the golden kiwis were less common in the US, and you could only get them in the summertime. I could only find them in like the late summertime. That was when I could find them like at Whole Foods or specialty stores. About 15 years ago, I discovered these. You could never find them at a regular grocery. But at some of the specialty stores, you know, the high-end grocery stores, you could find these. And I'd buy a bunch of them because I know they'd be gone until the next summer. And then they started to be produced at a much higher rate and or a much higher yield. And so they don't cost quite as much as they used to. They're not $2 a piece like they used to be, or $2 or $3 a piece. But I know that, I can't remember if it was in California or New Zealand, because these are produced in the US now. About half are produced in China, and then probably about 30% are produced in New Zealand, and about 20% are produced in the US, primarily for the US market. And I can't remember in what place it was, but there was a bacterium that had wiped out a big portion of this particular crop, not the green one, but the golden one. And so that definitely drove up the price. But you know, I think they're just more delicious. When I eat, and this is just my personal opinion, the green kiwis, I think they're tasty. I've eaten them all my life. But there's like this sort of like back of the palate, like almost like a mild acrid flavor. Like it's not overpowering or anything, but it's there. These to me are much more smoother and complex in flavor and sweeter. These are more tart. So I prefer these. And so I, you know, and especially because I've been working with food for so long, I've handled literally probably tens of thousands of these, making fruit trays and stuff like that, that this one is like, to me, much more special. And I'd rather eat fewer of these than more of these. I have a story about Jack Curtin, and I wasn't going to talk out of school, but since you're here, I'm going to tell him. Jack Curtin was part of my my summer training, or my winter training program for my culinary volunteers. It's called Extension Cooks Club. It's part of the ECA, the Extension Community Association group. And we were peeling these, and we were making fruit trays for a big event. And I was peeling these, and he said, "Hey, save me some of those peels." And I said, "What are you going to do with them? Are you going to compost them?" He's like, "No, I eat them." And I was like, "Jack, honey, you can eat the inside too. Like, you can eat them." And he said, "Well, you eat for pleasure, and I eat for nutrition." And I said, "Jack, honey, I eat for both. What are you talking about?" And I'll remember that forever. When I picked the kiwi this week, I thought of you, Jack. I really did. So I'm really glad that you're here.
There's always one crazy person in the crowd, I guess, huh?
Well, I have a question that follows up on that. Well, sorry, it's kind of a funny question. Will you get sick if you eat a lot of kiwi, since it helps you use the bathroom?
Well, I don't know that you would get sick. You know, there's always, you know, such thing as too much of a good thing. And so all fruits and vegetables have fiber. So I don't think you'd get sick. But yeah, I mean, if you were eating like a ton of proteases, if you ate like, you know, 40 tomatoes, I'm sure you wouldn't feel good. So, you know, if you're eating one thing, like a whole bunch of it, especially something as acid as this, it's very acidic. And so I think probably, you know, it may make you be more regular, if you know what I mean. But also it may cause you a little bit of indigestion because it's pretty acidic. So, you know, eating a few of them a day wouldn't be a big deal, but I wouldn't sit down to a case of them and eat every single one because, you know, just like even if you've ever gone like picking blueberries and you eat a bunch of blueberries, like you feel a little like, oh, blueberries, like it's too much. So I've never eaten that many to know, but I know that if I eat something really acidic, like a bunch of it, it'll kind of make my stomach not feel so great. So everything in moderation.
Great. So you answered one of the next question, which was, does that mean the fruit is acidic? So we'll say we answered that.
Yeah.
I've had yellow flesh kiwi that were hairy. Is that a different type of kiwi?
It is. So there's so many types of kiwis. They've got golden kiwis with hair with like a red halo on the inside. They have some with white flesh. A lot of these are not available commercially, not in this country anyway. So you know, you may be able to grow them in certain regions. You know, if you like, I mean, if you go to China or, you know, other places that are producers of this, like Italy also is another producer of kiwis. I don't know of all the different kinds that they have there, but they have that Mediterranean climate where there's not a lot of frost. And so they can grow more of a variety of them. So, I mean, I read about like 40 or 50 varieties and different species as well. So, so yes, I mean, that definitely exists, I'm sure.
All right. The next one is, can you grow kiwis locally?
One kind. There's only one kind that's tolerant to the cold. And I actually wrote down the name of it, so just in case anybody asks. It's Issai or Issai. It's Issai, and that's the variety that you can grow here. It's called a hardy kiwi, and basically it can handle up to like 10 degrees. So it can handle freezing, especially if you mulch its roots really well. But any of the other ones, they cannot tolerate frost at all, and you cannot grow them as an annual. So they're a perennial woody vine, and each one takes like 30 feet of space. They take a lot of space, and you need a male and a female. There is one variety though, and I don't think it's this one that I'm talking about. There is one variety that is that you only need one plant that has male and female flowers on it, so it can produce fruit on its own. But if you're growing, you know, if you have the ability, say you live in Florida and you wanted to grow these varieties, you need at least one male plant for eight female plants in order to pollinate them. It's the female plants that create the fruit. So the male plants don't do that. They're just there for pollination. So these are a perennial. So there's a lot of plants that we grow here that, you know, we grow as an annual that are a perennial in other places. Like for instance, rhubarb way up north, you grow rhubarb as a perennial. You put it in once and it feeds you again and again in the spring, year after year. Well, it's too hot for that here. So you can throw some rhubarb in the ground and you'll get a crop off of it before it dies from the heat. And so you just replant it every year as an annual. These guys, all of the kiwis are a perennial vine, a perennial woody vine that you plant it, and it could take 4 or 5 years for it to put off a fruit. And it really starts to really kick off fruit between 8 and 12 years of it living there. And so it's sort of like a kiwi vine is sort of, you would see it like a fruit tree. A fruit tree is a perennial. If it dies back, it's, you know, it's not coming back. You need time for it to develop its structure and all of its leaves in order to create fruit. So there is a hardy variety here that you can grow, but you need a lot of space. It's a gorgeous plant. All of them are. They have these sort of heart-shaped, beautiful leaves, and they're nice to put on, like to make like a privacy fence, basically. You can grow them. You could, if you wanted to know how to train them, just look at how to train grapevines, and you grow them in a very similar manner. That's another perennial, basically woody vine. And so you train them that way, and then, you know, they grow and they feed you for decades. Like once they get established, they feed you for decades and decades. So that's really nice. The ones that grow here, the hardy ones, are like a large grape, and they're hairless and green, and you can pop the whole thing in your mouth. Apparently it's got really thin skin. I've never had one, but I'm definitely interested in growing them. I just don't have that kind of space at home. And oh, another thing that I thought was really interesting that I read about the particular cold hardy ones, some cats react to them like catnip. So while you're establishing, you know, your little baby vine and it's growing up, you really should protect it from neighborhood cats. Just like catnip, it doesn't appeal to every cat, but the ones that it really appeals to, they'll tear up your plant, like rubbing up against it and slobbering all over it. So just beware of that if you're going to go ahead and plant one of these, you know, plant, well, multiples. You'll have to plant multiples of them to get the fruiting that you're looking for a decade down the road.
Awesome. So the next, we have some, actually, this is a really interesting question. Is it healthier to replace powdered lactose with the golden kiwi?
Powdered lactose. Well, I don't know. Are you talking about like powdered milk? Because lactose is milk sugar. And so, ooh, I'm gonna do a little more visual learning here if I can find my marker. So, lactose is a milk sugar, and it's a disaccharide. It's got two sugars, monosaccharides that are bonded together. And visual learners, okay. So lactose is a milk sugar, and I don't know. You can probably buy. You can't buy lactose at the grocery store unless you're buying milk, but you could probably get this at like a chemical company that sells to food companies. You could probably buy this, but I don't know of anybody cooking with this or anything. It's not like an ingredient you would use in your kitchen.
I think she means just, she did a clarification that it's more like a laxative powder she's talking about.
Oh, are you talking about, like, no, it's not like a laxative powder, not at all. No, we were just using this as an example of ose and ace. Like this is a sugar this is the sugar of milk, and this is the enzyme that breaks apart this sugar. So that I was just showing the structure of that. It's not gonna, like, unless you eat a ton of them, just like if you ate just like if you ate like 3 pounds of strawberries, it's gonna affect you. It's eating a lot of fiber at one time and a lot of water is going to cause you to become like very regular. So, but if you're just generally eating fruits and vegetables in your diet, you're going to be regular anyway. So, but it's not like a laxative. It's not, you have to eat a whole bunch of them. But in general, it's the reason that people, as they age and they don't eat as much food anymore, or maybe they can't chew a lot of fruits and vegetables anymore because of their teeth, they'll drink Metamucil in the morning or like a fiber powder. And that gives them, as if they've eaten enough fruits and vegetables of the day, at least in their fiber intake, to make sure that they're digestively healthy. So that's what I meant by that. That's a good question.
Yeah, it was a good question. Thank you for clarifying, question asker. So a next one is about recipes. So do you know any good dessert recipes using these?
Oh, yes. Okay. So these would be really good in, like, they make really excellent popsicles. Any kind of acidic fruit is really great if you blend it up with sugar and freeze it in those little popsicle. You can get them at like the dollar store, those little popsicle makers. They're really refreshing and wonderful. A lot of times you'll find these on top of like a fruit tart. So what they do professionally is they make like a graham cracker crust and they put like either lemon curd inside of the crust or like a vanilla English cream or like a Boston cream or whatever inside of it, or an egg cream. And then they'll top it with sliced kiwi and berries and things like that, and then put like a mild sugar syrup over the top. You don't have to put the sugar syrup on it. They just do that to make it look glossy in the store. So a lot of times you'll see kiwi on there because there's not a ton of green fruits, and so it really causes the colors to pop. So this would be great on top of like a little fruit parfait as well. You can do like, this is a fun thing to do with kids. You can do like yogurt, chopped fruit, yogurt, chopped fruit, granola in a glass, and then they can see it, or a plastic clear cup. And it's kind of like a little bit more fancy, but it's actually like, it's like a dessert or a breakfast. So that's a really good one. It'd be great in smoothies. Anything that has to do with like freezing, this would be really good and like really refreshing. I've heard of people also dehydrating these. I've never done it. I just eat them whole. But people will slice them thinly and sometimes dip them in a sugar syrup or just no sugar syrup at all and lay them out in a dehydrator, and then it's like a fruit leather. So.
Awesome. And one more kiwi question is about how much does the plant release or make?
Oh, it really depends on the year. Once it's really cranking, and it really also depends on, like, if you let it grow out and you don't cut it back drastically every year. I mean, you're going to get a lot of fruit off of it. I would have to look it up to see, like, at least on an agricultural yield, what you would get off of it. But I'm sure, like, one plant, because of its size, is going to give you more kiwis than you could ever eat, and your neighbors will all be enjoying kiwi, because these plants get huge and they put off a lot of fruit. So, you know, for a family of 4, if you had a male and female plant, you'd be in kiwis for a while. And they come ripe about October. They start to turn color in our hemisphere, at least in September, and then you harvest them in October, when they start to not get totally soft, but you pick them right before they get soft.
Awesome. Well, we have answered all the questions that have come in. Does anyone want to raise their hand and say anything before we end? We have like 30 seconds. You can get in a word. All right, I think not. So I think we'll end. And please, everyone, join us again next week. We're here and we're on Facebook Live.
Yes, please join us. It's going to be awesome. I look forward to next week and seeing you all again.